Why a Mercedes? Why a diesel? And why 1987? Well, let me tell you.
I actually used to own a 1986 Mercedes 380 SL, which is one big reason why I love this 300 series. Tara and I had a lot of great memories with that car.
I have never worked on or ever been around a diesel motor, which is exactly why I chose it. It's something new. But what's even better is that I bought it running and driving for $1,800. It seemed perfect. The exterior was beautiful, the interior looked nearly flawless, and it really brought me back to my 380 SL. I mean, what? It might have a possible blunt head gasket. I've replaced a head gasket before, so I'm not too scared of that. ABS? That's not a big deal. Small rust spots? I'm okay with that. And a dent in the door? I can look over that. For now. We are embarking on an exciting journey to breathe new life into this car. This car is filthy. Dog hair throughout the interior, and it smells like the carpet has never been cleaned, and that dog hair is not helping. The exterior is going to be just as bad, with sap and other dirt and debris truly stuck into the paint. After all, this is a single stage paint, which means there's no clear coat, so this should be fun.
And we are definitely excited to see just how well this Mercedes cleans up.
Taking a look at this Mercedes, and at first glance, it may not look that bad, but it definitely needs a good lathering. Scrub dub dub baby. Because if you look closer, check out this hood. No, check it out. There's these little sap specks on the entire surface of the car, and they are extremely hard to get off. After I did the best I could at cleaning the surface of the car, it's time to hit the wheels. These beautiful wheels are covered with brick dust. And what I find very weird is how the brick dust kind of centered in the middle of the wheel. Very weird. But lucky for me, this wheel cleaner really cut through that brick dust. For those of y'all with keen eyes, you might have noticed my mistake. Sure, this wheel looks pretty clean, but these rims are bare aluminum, and using an acid cleaner was probably not a good idea. As you can see, it stained the wheels. Anywho, that's an issue for future Chris.
This is a clay bar, and since there are so many things I just simply can't get out of the paint with soap, I'm going to clay bar the entire car. There's a lot of nicks in the paint. I'll just love to see it look the best it can in its current state. I'll be using the soap bucket. Whenever it gets dirty, you want to knead it, just fold it in half, and get back at it. That UPS driver just came up to me and said, "You bought that off that same person I was talking to?" Yeah, I sure did.
Let me tell you something. I clay barred for what felt like was forever. Then I continued to clay bar, and then I clay barred some more. The clay bar took out anything and everything that soap alone could not get. And that door handle looks so good.
So that took about 6 hours, but it was so worth it. We didn't have this shine before. Definitely took longer than I expected. Now there's 2 more things I want to do before the sun goes down. Let's go ahead and ceramic coat it so it'll be easier to clean next time.
And the second thing to do is to replace this blinker. Here in Texas, antique cars have to pass safety inspection, and this is a hazard. I ended up buying this replacement from TRQ Auto Parts. Now to remove the blinker, there's a tab in the back that you have to push in, then you simply pull the housing right out. Then you simply push in the new one until it clicks. That's not the click. And spoiler, it ended up falling out on the way to registration. So that was fun.
It's about time I buy one of these.
I have never seen connectors like this. I didn't want to break them because if I did, I knew it would be expensive to replace. And there weren't any videos or many forums talking about how to remove them. But lucky for you, I'm here. This is one of the plugs, very weird looking. And all you have to do is get a flathead screwdriver and just pry upwards. Then do the same thing with the other connector. It may not look that dirty, but it is filthy. In this one scene, there are 2 cigarette burns on the OEM rug that came from Mercedes. Of course, there's trash, stuck on dog hair that is not easy to remove, and some grody grime, because who doesn't love grime? A shift knob filled with years and years of hand grime, and this steering wheel is so much worse. And you guessed it, more trash. That's not all of it. So let's clean this seemingly clean but filthy interior. This is a DIY carpet cleaner solution. First you add some seltzer water, white vinegar. I used non-scented dish soap. Then I added some essential oil to give it that good smell, but it really wasn't all that great smelling. So next time, scented dish soap. I then proceeded to spray the solution on all of the greasy carpets. Let them all sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then I use this Bissell carpet cleaner, which I'll link down below for your convenience. Let's see how much life we can bring back from all these aged, gross carpets. I am so surprised on how good of condition this leather is in, and I want to keep it that way, and I'm going to try my best to protect it and hopefully have it last another 20-30 years. And the first step to do that is to take care of it with some type of leather cleaner, because after all, if you boil it all down, this is a piece of history, and we shouldn't just erase history, we should preserve it and learn from it, no matter how good or bad it might be. It's worth learning from, and it's worth glorifying the good. And I want to try my very best to glorify this Mercedes.
That's pretty smart.
That there, my friends, is the face of complete disgust. I'm not lying to you when I say I felt like I was about to puke. That is all years of hand gunk. We are on the home stretch, guys. We had to get rid of all this stuck on hair on the low pile carpet with some rubber gloves. And of course, it's all on the back of the car as well. And finally, we just need to clean these windows because they are filthy with dog saliva, my favorite. And with that, this detailing is done. Oh, you want to see the finale? Well, you can see it after we register the car. Well, let me quickly recap the process. With a busted blinker, I went to try to get inspected and they said no go. And the registration appointment is on Monday, which is just a few days ahead. So I figured I'd try to pull a blinker from the junkyard. I found this 500 series, which at first glance, it looked like it had the same blinker, but it did not. Since I was there, I went ahead and pulled the ABS module. It was actually pretty easy. Just used some pliers and it was good to go. Found some Astrovans that were ready to be destroyed, which was a sad sight to see. I have an Astrovan, a 2002. I guess it's in the pile to be destroyed. There's nothing over there that's about to be destroyed. Saw some pretty comfortable Astrovan captain seats. I like these seats though. I kind of wanted to take them, but I didn't. Although the last time I was at this junkyard, there's like 6 Astrovans. This time there's only 3. And I went ahead and grabbed this plastic trim piece which covers up the wires. I am tired of stepping on the wires in my van. These are the wires I'm talking about. And come to find out, they're trying to jit me on the ABS module, so I left it there. You gotta guess how much they were gonna charge for that ABS module. Used, don't even know if it works, ABS module. $145. I used one, and they didn't even know it came from the Mercedes. It was just ABS module. Crazy, why they charge so much for an ABS module that I pick myself when I can find on eBay with it working for far less cheaper. I don't know. Anyways, I ordered another blinker from TRQ and it came in just a nick of time. They have some pretty fast shipping. And so did the new hood latch. That came pretty quick as well. I was sick and tired of using that hanger, so I'm glad I replaced that latch. It literally just pops in. And come to find out, whenever this car got into a wreck, it pushed the headlight back, which messed up the mount for the headlight, which prevented the blinker from setting in its slot properly, which is why it fell out. So I fixed that, fixed the mounting spot, put it back into its normal spot. Then while I was reinstalling the headlight, I broke the housing. Great. The reason I replaced this is to pass inspection. I just busted the headlight. What if I put some tape on it? Then I found out that the brights on that side isn't working. So I removed the headlight thinking I had to remove the entire headlight and disassemble it to remove the bulb. A relic. And another relic. Then I figured out what kind of bulb it is. and I bought a new one, which I could have just found out with the headlight still in the car. Just pulled it all out just for fun. The more you know about your car, the better, I guess. That's pretty easy. Just untwist this, and this sucker basically pulls out. So now we need a new one. These lights on both headlights are not working. Then I took it to get inspected. Well, we passed the safety inspection. Yay! And at the same time, used their tire service and got new tires because the Mercedes needed it. And this is the last thing we need to do before we call it done. Yes, it's a used OEM replacement. Wow, this Mercedes came out amazing. And that steering wheel, just knowing I'm putting my hands on something clean is so nice. This Mercedes came out so great. It smells good now. I placed some of these Gonzo bubbles in here and it just smells like an old Mercedes now, so that's good. And it's a pretty nice place to be. However, we still have a lot of issues with this Mercedes. We are going to check to see if this has a blown head gasket by using a block tester. Then we're going to check the compression of each cylinder and finally clean the injectors with the diesel purge. On cold startups, the exhaust does blow out white smoke, which has me worried. Is it a blown head gasket or a cracked head? What could it be? Not only that, whenever I press on the gas and fully release, the motor stumbles and sometimes it dies. So it has me kind of concerned. This is the block tester I'll be using, and everything I use will be linked down below for your convenience. On a cold motor, you will insert this tube into the coolant filter neck, creating a nice secure seal. You will then add some blue magic liquid to squeeze this bulb while the car idles for around 30 minutes. You start this process when the motor is cold. You don't want to open up that radiator when it's hot because the coolant will spew up and probably hurt you. So this process is always started with the motor cold. I went ahead and started the car and squeezed the bulb. If you have a blown head gasket, it will leak exhaust gases into your cooling system, and this test will detect those gases and turn this blue liquid yellow. So I've been doing that for about 30 minutes and no crazy bubbles are coming up. One of the bubbles that are coming up seems to be due to the seal not being completely perfect whenever it moves around. I don't think it has a blown head gasket. The block tester didn't get any fumes within the coolant, and that is great. However, being at 190,000 miles, I want to double check it. I want to double check if it does have a blown head gasket. And to do that, I have this diesel compression tester. If you have a gas motor, you need the gas variant. It has the ability to test compression through the glow plugs or the fuel injectors. I'll be using the fuel injector parts as I want to replace these clutch washers anyways. First, I went ahead and vacuumed around the injectors. The last thing you want is to have debris fall into the cylinder. I sprayed some WD-40 on the hardware to hopefully make breaking loose all these bolts a bit easier. And finally, I went at breaking the first fuel line with a 9/16 wrench. And if you want, you can cut this with an angle grinder and get this around the fuel line and then break loose the bolt. I unscrewed the rest of it by hand, pushed them out of the way. Now, I know I had access to place the socket around the injectors. However, I did not have the right size. And a quick Google search away, and I found that this should be the right size. Should. The next day, the part came in, and it did not fit. Just came from Autocraft, from AutoZone, and we got something that actually fits. Should have done that in the first place. This is a 27 millimeter. I'm not gonna lie, I thought I broke it, but I didn't. That's good. Those things are just tight in there.
I'm gonna keep this lightly screwed in there just so nothing falls into that hole. Now let's move on to the rest of these doohickeys.
Using needle nose pliers is by far the easiest way to remove these hoses. I took a photo of the fuel hose assembly before it was too late, so I can refer to it later. After the fuel hoses were removed, I broke loose all the fuel line bolts using a hammer with soft blows, which made this process hassle-free.
I am not gonna lie, this is kind of sketchy. This one's a tight squeeze to get the socket on there, but you can do it. If not, just remove this neck. This one was a lot easier to remove. So I'm kind of a little concerned if that was normal or not. I mean, it all looks good, I guess. If you don't have a big boy breaker bar, anything longer than this, then this is gonna be semi-difficult to do. So when you're pulling against your body, I'd rather pull, because if I'm pushing this way, my hand might slip and I might punch something, and I'd rather not punch something again. It does not feel good. And when you pull, make sure you're not coming down, because you can elbow something. I'm gonna go ahead and compress this fully, because I saw some fella on the interwebs do it, and he stated that it will reduce the amount of diesel coming out when you're doing a test.
I really do not think it did anything, but hey, it's closed anyways.
So let's go ahead and remove one of these. So we have a fuel injector tester, then we have a glow plug tester. So you could do either one. I chose to do fuel injectors because it's easier to get to. All right, so this one right off the bat looks like it's the right one, and it is. Now we need to tie in it snugly. That should be good. Then we just put this right on top. There you go.
And this here is why I wear a hat. Protected me from getting all this hood insulation on my head. I'd recommend removing all the fuel injectors just so the motor can turn over without any resistance. This will help you use less battery and help you get to the final compression number a lot quicker.
Now all we have to do is grab the key and kick over the motor. Mercedes says that the motor should be in operating temperature before you do this to get the accurate numbers. I'm just looking for an average of numbers that are pretty similar. If I don't get that, then I know I have an issue. That looks like it's pretty good compression. And this is spewing everywhere. 8, so 368 on cylinder 1. So that's 310. Oh shit, I just realized you're supposed to take these out. They're in each one of these holes. That can't be right. So it says 200.
I think from 86 to 87, the number 13 head is prone to cracking between, in most cases, cylinder 3 and 4.
We come to the side of the motor and look right into there. You can see the head's casting number. And that number right there is 14.
So what I'm gonna do is grab a bit of oil, pour it down that cylinder, and if the pressure goes up, it's bad piston rings, which is what this is gonna test right now. I poured a little bit too much oil into the cylinder, which is not a big deal. Then I cranked the motor over.
And that's what happens when you don't put this into the cylinder properly.
Removing the intake crossover should have been done a long time ago because it's been in the way this entire time. So if you're doing this job, go ahead and remove the intake crossover. It's only 3 bolts, so why not?
Ooh, that is grody. That is so much carbon. Now, there you go, fully sat.
PSI is at right below 600, so that tells me that at least in cylinder 3, that it's not cracked. That's good news, great news.
Yeah, 210. Yep, so that is 140.
So cylinder 1, 368. Cylinder 2, 310, 200, 210, 200, 140. Cylinder 6 with 140 psi kind of scared me. So I poured some oil down the cylinder and gave it another compression test, which resulted in 450 psi, which means it's not the result of a cracked head.
So we are going to soak the rings with
Acetone
and automatic transmission fluid. It will seep into the rings and break up all that thick carbon deposits and hopefully reduce all the blow-by.
I'm gonna pour all the automatic transmission fluid in here, then fill the bottle back up.
We're gonna do a 50-50 ratio between the transmission fluid and the acetone. So I got this method from a fellow YouTuber. The channel name is called D-Boss Garage. The concoction should slowly seep through the cylinders and clean up this piston rings as best as it can. So once it gets low, I'm gonna top off the fluid.
For the next week, I continue to top off the cylinders with a 1:1 ratio of ATF and acetone. Before we do the final compression test, we have to drive the car in operating temperature to further break loose those piston rings. The heat and the friction makes a big deal, and I'll show why in a minute. And of course, we want to remove the old fluid and add fresh fluid, using a 13mm socket to break loose the drain bolt and making a slight mess. All the fluid is removed. The filter also needs to be removed by 3 more 13mm bolts. The middle alignment bolt pulls all the way out. Go ahead and remove the cap and finally remove the oil filter. I was surprised to see that this oil filter was from Ukraine. The cap's O-ring has not been replaced in a very long time since it is cracking and pretty smashed compared to the new O-ring. Taking a closer look at the alignment pin, these 2 O-rings are rock hard. So I went ahead and broke them off. The alignment bolt has a hole going all the way down the middle of it. You should be able to blow air through it, and if you can't, that means it is clogged due to the dirty old oil, like in my case. To clean it out, I soaked it in acetone, which quickly started to remove the clogged, thick, dirty oil. I spent some time probing the inside of the pin to break loose the oil and blowing out the old oil. After letting it sit for a while longer, I came back and blew out the rest of the oil. And now it's fully unclogged. I got a syringe and removed the excess fluid out of the oil pan because I do not want any leftover acetone mixing with the fresh fluid, which proved to be a messy job. I added some fresh Rotella 15W40, which was recommended by the W124 forum gods, and poured some in the filter housing and the engine. The forum gods say it takes around 8.5 quarts. And of course, you want to check the dipstick periodically to make sure you're not under or overfilling it. I reinstalled the oil cap, then reinstalled the fuel injectors, which are torqued to spec. I did 7.2 Newton meters. I ordered a standard fuel line with the correct internal diameter as a replacement, which proved to be a little difficult to install as the hoses are thicker compared to the OEM hose. And finally, I took a quick mechanic shower. And we are good to go. Before you reinstall the injectors, go ahead and crank over the motor to remove all the excess fluid. After the quick test drive, I noticed 2 things. The car was blowing white smoke even while I was driving. And when I gassed it, a lot more smoke came out, which is new and did not happen before. And 2, the oil filter housing is leaking. And as you can see, Tara was not impressed. The proper way to tighten the housing is to go from the left bolt to the right bolt and slowly tighten it all the way down with the alignment bolt all the way in and kind of snug. Then finally, once these bolts are completely down, you can completely tighten the middle bolt, which is something I learned after the first time doing this. So learn from my mistakes so you don't do them yourself. We did a short test drive a few days ago, got up to operating temperature, didn't push it too hard. I just want to see where we are. What are the new compression numbers? Let's find out. These don't make much sense to me. I'm gonna add oil to cylinder 6 and see if that raises the compression, because I'm kind of curious if this is broken. I just want to make sure. There's no way that all of these leveled out to 250 and this one at 220. Maybe, but I don't fully buy it just yet. Okay, moment of truth, I guess. So 600 and something PSI. All right, so 220, 250, 250, 250, 250, and 240. Cylinder 1 went down in PSI, and all the rest of the cylinders have went up in the PSI. And the last one went up 100 PSI. And that's just after one short drive. And I also guess that a better balanced engine is a healthier engine. I want to try to stop that smoking in the tailpipe upon startup. And that's what this is for. But before we do that, we need to reinstall all of this. And I've got new injector washers to replace these old ones. To do this diesel purge, we need to go right here. We need to block off the 2 upstream fuel lines because they will pour out diesel if we don't. It takes a Phillips. I got some hose I had lying around and screwed some bolts in them to create a blockage, and they were too small. So I found a larger hose which ended up working perfectly. Both these are now capped off. Now I have 2 free hoses. I cleaned the hoses that will be feeding the purge into the motor with Simple Green and routed those hoses into the end of a water bottle to keep the hoses close to each other. I am using 2 cans of this diesel purge, which will end up being 1 can, which I'll explain at the end of the video, but you should be doing 2. With the top of the bottle finally filled up, it was time to crank the car over. You want to keep topping out the fluids until you go through 2 diesel purge cans. I do have the Mercedes half outside the garage, so all the exhaust fumes can exit safely, which will take about half an hour to an hour. Sorry, upstairs neighbor. I know that's a little loud. I think it sounds better. I don't think smoke's coming from the tailpipe. I think a lot of things. We will do a cold start later. There's a hole in the bottom of this bottle. Anyways, let's just say I did 1 bottle. My goodness, I just like overlook the simplest things. Now, a few days later and a cold Mercedes later, it's time to see if the diesel purge worked. Some people think that when things get older, they should just be thrown away. And having a seemingly tired motor, which by the way, I've never worked on a diesel before this, so it was definitely intimidating tackling this project. And having rust on most of the fenders, the side skirt, and having dents on both the rear quarter panel and the door definitely makes you think that's not worth it. But me and my new friend both think it is. It'll take some elbow grease and a lot of time, but resurrecting a piece of history is a beautiful thing. Has been overheating, and that is one of its most fatal flaws. Because if these motors overheat, especially with motors with cylinder heads cast number 14, the cylinders can track between cylinders 3 and 4. I took my car to a car event and I had to sit in a lot of traffic. Now, typically the car overheats to about 80 to 100 degrees. And I knew that was not normal, but sitting on traffic and on the way back home, it got about right there. So I knew that I had a serious problem.
The radiator cap could be bad even if the seals look perfect. Because what's causing it to overheat is the spring. Quite a bit harder to press in compared to the OEM one. What was my issue that caused my car to overheat is the fan clutch. Fan clutch. Basically what happens is that the fan is not spinning as fast as the motor is turning. So I'm gonna show you how to check that and fix it. If this clutch fan is bad, when I turn over the car with this cardboard in, the clutch fan would stop. So let's see if it stops or if it kicks out this cardboard. Just like that, we found out that the fan clutch, not clutch fan, is bad. So we just got the replacement fan clutch. We need to gain access to this clutch fan right here. So we have two clips here and here that we need to move. And we can unclip this. Now we need to push this back and gain access to that 8-meter Allen bolt. So we need to get this 8mm right in the middle of this clutch fan clutch. I have it on the bolt. And I'm gonna use this as leverage to break loose that said bolt. So I put my vice grips on this pulley here. I put a metal rod to prevent the vice grips from allowing this pulley from twisting this way, all while I broke this bolt loose. It did make a pretty loud noise when I broke it loose, so don't be too scared. Now you can take it out by hand. Two hands are a bit easier, okay? Yep, 10mm. This has already been replaced. It is not a Mercedes OEM part, but there are German words here. So maybe it is a Mercedes part. Okay, we got it all installed. Looks pretty good. I did a light cleaning. We want this side to be the back side going against the motor. So it's gonna go on just like that. I'm using medium thread locker on here as well, just for extra security. Let's get this sucker on. I moved my vice grips to a position that when the belt starts turning this way, the vice grip will stop it. I will say, I'm not too sure how tight this should be, so I'm just gonna do a couple more. So as soon as I'll drive around and stop, the brake pedal would pulsate and kick back a little bit, but ultimately it will stop the car with 0 issues. It'll do that about 5 to 10 times until the ABS light illuminates, then it will stop kicking back. With that in mind, I knew that it wasn't gonna be a warped rotor or anything like that because it wouldn't continue to act funny after the ABS light turned on. And since I knew that 70% of the brake system has already been replaced, I kind of knew where I could skip over and go straight to. So the first thing that I checked was the OVP regulator, or the over voltage protection regulator. And that is right back here. Basically, whenever that goes bad, it can cause slow starts or rough starts, the ABS light to illuminate, the AC compressor not to turn on, all that fun stuff. So I figured that would be an easy start, so I went ahead and retinned all the soldering joints. Basically, the soldering joints could have a micro crack within it that prevents the proper amount of voltages going through the regulator, all that fun stuff. Therefore sending out some weird codes to your computer and it's just not working properly. So you get your soldering iron and you basically lay it right on top of each soldering joints, wait until it heats up, and melts into a pool again, then you release. So I did that to all the soldering joints. I even added solder to some of the joints. This has this plastic piece that goes on the front of it to prevent the soldering joints from arcing over to the case. So make sure you reinstall that plastic piece and make sure you reinstall that 10 amp fuse. That did not fix my issue. Kind of obvious, because if that was the issue causing the ABS light to illuminate, it would illuminate immediately as soon as I turn over the car. It did allow the car to start up quicker and faster, and the car does feel a bit more solid after that. And the SRS light is actually illuminating for 5 seconds as soon as I kick over the car instead of the few seconds as it used to. So I'm pretty sure that did fix a few issues, just not the ABS issue. We're back at the front wheels. The next major issue that could be throwing off the ABS light, and which actually happened to my 08 Tahoe as well, is the wheel speed sensors. With this Mercedes, there's 2 in the front on each wheels and 1 on the diff. With my Tahoe, there is a wheel speed sensor on each wheel. Could be possible that the sensor itself went bad. But with these Mercedes, it's very, very common for the sensors to be very dirty from brake dust and all that stuff. The sensors are magnets measuring the distance from the gears that are rotating within the wheel. So if that magnet has too much brake dust, then that could mess with the resistance on each wheel and cause the ABS to act up and cause that pulsating brakes that I just talked about at low speeds. The symptoms for the wheel speed sensors typically only happen at low speeds. So I went ahead and removed these wheel speed sensors. The front for this Mercedes takes a hex 6mm. And there's 2 bolts, so go ahead and break those loose and remove them. And the speed sensor just pulls right out. Now, as you can see, they are filthy with brake dust. This magnet is filthy. It's about 1/4 inch thick with brake dust, which could very well hinder the resistance between the gears and the sensor itself. But I went ahead and sprayed it down with some throttle body cleaner. Spray this off. Already looks 1,000 times better. Wrapped it down with some Simple Green, installed it, spun the wheel 1 more time, removed it, and then cleaned it again. And I did that for both front of the wheels. Then I took the car for a test drive, and the pulsating was almost gone. I say almost because it was still there. So then I brought the car back, then I went to the back of the diff, and then I came back here to the diff and removed that speed sensor. That one took, I think, an H5.5. Removed that speed sensor, which was actually a pain in the butt to remove. It took a lot of work, a lot of prying. It was really stuck in there. It would go in easily, but it would not want to come out. So with a lot of elbow grease, a lot of wedging, a lot of prying, be careful you don't bust the casing open, like I almost did with the flathead and a hammer. But I eventually got it out. And to my surprise, it was actually not that dirty. So I just cleaned it off, reinstalled it, and took the car for another test drive. As you might expect, that did not fix the issue because it was really not all that dirty. Now, since all the wheel speed sensors are clean, the brake pedal is not pulsating nearly as much, I really tried to determine and break down what was causing the pulsating of the brakes. So after I cleaned out the wheel speed sensors, the only time the brake pedal would pulsate was when I was braking and turning left at the same time. So that made me think, if the car is turning left and I'm braking, there's more pressure on this rotor pressing onto that brake pad. So I know this brake caliper is new. The rotor looks good. And I also knew that this brake caliper was old. So then I thought, I'm like, oh wait, I do have brake pad marks on this caliper. It's not really that bad, but that could very well be the issue. I would like to assume that every mechanic kind of hits every corner when they're doing the brake job, but you know, they didn't do the wheel speed sensors. That's an easy thing to do. So I was thinking perhaps they missed another easy thing because that wasn't on the paycheck or the bill. These calipers, and a lot of calipers, have sliding pins that adjust to the movement of the rotor and the pressures and all that stuff. It basically allows the brake pads and this piece right here to not get stuck to the rotor. So I went ahead and removed these sliding bolts right here. That's a 13mm. You want to put a wrench on here too and break that loose, remove it, and to my surprise, that sliding pin bolt was not lubricated with fresh lubricant. With some fresh copper anti-seize, I added it to the bolt and reinstalled it,
tightened it, and now I don't have any more ABS issues. Bam, just like that. Now, if none of that was the issue, it could boil it down back to the ABS module itself. There are 3 relays within the module, and it's kind of specific to this car, and I don't know the full ins and outs of it. Just that those relays can go bad